Hi, welcome back to the Kyra Wisdom channel, where we're doing part 2 on communication with spirit or communication with the infinite. How is it that we experience the power and the presence of the divine I am? We can call it that. We can call it the divine infinite source, the universal consciousness that is operating in, through, and as each one of us. And yet, how is it that it specifically communicates? Because part of what we're all looking to understand is how to communicate with that higher self, our soul, the divine spirit within. We can call it all those different things. But what are the communication channels and how do we open them? That's really the message we're seeking. And so today, I want to share another of my own internal processes with spirit speak or with communication from beyond. And I'm not talking about mediumship here, though that's available if that's your path. Each and every one of us have access to the infinite inner wisdom, the realms of the I am, of the consciousness of God essence, love that we are, and the many communication channels that are helping us follow our intuition, follow our knowing of our own soul, and allowing that Christ consciousness, that higher self, to guide our lives in ways that create greater flow, greater experience of connection, and therefore it feels as if all things become simpler. It doesn't mean we don't face challenges, but when we have that communication and we come to our own clarity, we're not running around in the world chasing down information. We're instead aware of the way that we're being communicated with every single moment, because every one of us is already receiving the communications in the ways that are meant for us to receive them. But we have to open ourselves to recognize those ways that we're receiving information. Now, we know there are many typical ways. It's certainly paying attention. We understand nowadays much more about the numbers, right? That when you're seeing sacred numbers, 1111, 22, 222, 333, 3333, 444, fives, all fives, any repetitive numbers are reaching out to us to help us recognize that we're having connection to something much more, something beyond this known realm that operates in ways that we see and feel, but there's something else. I spoke the last time about having direct encounters with Jesus, who I now know as Yeshua, because not only did it happen where he came to soothe me at the time of childhood, as I spoke in the last video, but also he came to work with me as in my inner child. And this is in the realm of, you might call it imagination, you might call it just touching into the sacred and finding the symbol of the infinite essence or the higher self that speaks to your soul. During a time in adulthood when I was finally facing some of the unresolved hurt and pain and areas of my life where I'd blocked my emotional energy and needed to come to healing, I discovered that there was this part of me, this child inside, that was filled with rage and so angry at me personally that she wouldn't even come into the light to let me see her, even in my imagination. When I went into the inner realms and asked to speak to my inner child, open to her, she was so angry she refused to come out and talk to me, though I knew she was there. She spoke the fact that she was angry at me. I heard, or I knew this message. It's almost telepathic in a way. And so sometimes when we can focus on our inner realm, we can ask a relevant question and invite an answer to be given to us, is one of the ways that we can communicate. In this particular case, I was going in to experience my feelings and see if I could get in touch with that which was the childlike wonder and joy again, which I knew is the essence of my soul. but was not really flourishing and operating at the level of my everyday life. Instead, I was repeating patterns that were unhealthy. I was unresolved and fearful. And so when I tried to speak to my inner child and could not get an answer, I called on the divine. I called on my soul essence, my higher self, to provide an answer. Well, the one that was most, familiar with me from a childhood was Yeshua, Jesus. For me, I knew him as Yeshua at some point along the way through dreams. So that's another way that we can get spoken to, is in dreams. Yeshua would come to me and have conversations or resolve something for me. But in this particular case, I was going in to resolve some inner emotions. And in that, I knew that we needed help. My inner child and I were not communicating. So I called on, I said, is it Yeshua? Who is it that wants to come and help? And Yeshua showed up because he'd been there in my childhood in various times and ways. And so he showed up and he started having conversations. So I created a sacred space in my heart that we went to. And I would consciously choose to take time alone in the silence, go on an inner journey into this sacred place. And I perceived it in my heart, and yet it was a place of green growing, beautiful trees, and there was a little tree swing, and there was a stump, and maybe it's because of the pictures growing up of Jesus sitting on a stump with the children, I don't know. But in this case, it was a sacred space for me. And so Yeshua invited my little girl to come into the light and allow him to communicate with her. She says, as long as I don't have to talk to her. And what ensued were 3 years worth of conversations that took this inner child through a process of inviting her to open up and express what her anger was, what she was upset about, why she felt so betrayed, what had happened in the journey. And as she expressed those things, these emotions came broiling out of me and were challenging. I would set specific amounts of time aside to do this work. And then sometimes it would find me right before I went to sleep again. I would about to go to sleep, and then the realization that I was in this sacred space in my heart and this conversation was being continued. And so it took a while for her to come out and be willing to say everything that she had to say. She had felt that her voice had never been heard, that she wasn't allowed to really express what she felt. Instead, had to show up as the good girl and always the happy one, and never able to really be angry or upset or cry all the tears she needed to cry. As an empath and highly sensitive being, there was a lot of pent-up energy inside of me, having taken on so many experiences in my life. So as a result, these communications would go on, and Jesus got her to speak to him. And eventually he'd put her on the little swing in this place, in my sacred place in my heart, and he would push her. And one day she said, I'll let her push me now. And it was a monumental moment for me, that I knew some healing had happened with my inner child, and that this communication with the infinite self, with the higher self of me, is working with me on healing me on the inside out, all the parts of me that had been separated. So in this particular instance, she started to let me push her on the swing, and then she was able to tell me what she felt. And I was able to apologize and promise to protect her and allow that childlike wonder, which is my natural self, expressing as that inner child in her glory, and allowing her to be there and allowing that to come forth. And eventually, over the course of time, Yeshua continued to work with her, and she grew up. She kept growing older and older until it reached a point where she felt a resolve with me and comfortable with me. And Yeshua said it was time, and that we were to have an emergence, not an emergence, but a merging of the two of us. And he did a process to merge her into me. And there was something that became clearly alive in me with wonder and awe. And I agreed to honor her whims and wishes, to honor this inner child in me and to live from that wonder again and curiosity, and to allow the child out to play, to go and swing, and to do the things that would allow her to express, and to never withhold her voice. Because her voice is an important part of what I'm here to be and to share. And there was a huge healing that happened in my life. I could show up more authentically as myself. I could have the wisdom of the child within me that had much greater wisdom sometimes, and awareness of what I was feeling, or the nuances of energies that I, as an adult, would want to deny with the mind. And yet she just had knowing about. And so I allowed that innocence to come back online, so to speak. And as that emerged, there were many, many things that happened. And I'll share some of those in another video. For this moment, what I want to share is that sometimes the communication can happen because we ask for that guidance. We ask for a guide to show up and support us and help us along the way. That's what happened for me. And so therefore a guide, one that I had connection with, but it might be somebody else. It could be Yoda for you. It could be, your grandmother. It could be Mother Mary. It could be anybody. It could yourself in another form. We'll talk another day about Kyra and how she showed up for me. But these communications with the infinite are available to each and every one of us to do the healing that is ours to do, to open to the awareness of that there are communication channels with our higher self that will take us to an ascension process, an awakening of our soul, so that we live from a higher vibration and frequency. And as a result of that, my life became more joyful. My life became freer. There was less suffering, less connection to the old woundedness of me. And so I wish for you to have the freedom, the joy, the wholeness that comes from working with that inner wisdom, calling on the guides that would speak with you, that would support you just by your asking and opening up. Is it our imagination? Maybe. But maybe it really is an infinite wisdom that communicates with intelligence according to that which we are open to. Well, I wish you great joy in the journey, great experiences of wisdom awareness in your own soul, because I know the universe of you is always here for you. And I know that there's so many more ways to communicate, and we'll talk about those on other videos. Blessings to you, my friend. Have a glorious, glorious day.